Good morning, folks. It is the 11th of April, Saturday morning. I've had a little bit to eat for breakfast. I ran out of propane. I moved and I started up last night trying to get some hot water out of the sink and it wouldn't work. I got by from November till, well, that's November, December, January, February, March. 4 months on a tank of propane. That tankless hot water heater was indulgent, and it was way too expensive, especially considering the first guy didn't put it in right, and I had to spend another $600 to get it corrected. But it has saved me fuel. The one advantage of it, and the reason that they sell so many more of these in Australia, is because the cost of energy has been higher down there, probably still is higher down there. And so it's basically an energy saving measure, which we didn't need to have, and we don't need to have in this country, except for the liars. By the way, that's just another tax under the King of Britain, no less. Prince Charles, who, by the way, will not take his oath on the Bible, the Christian Bible. He's already sworn he would never do that. His God is the other guy. And they're not the proper descendants on that throne. They took that, and they shouldn't have it. The proper King of England is actually living in Australia. He's an older gentleman, and he's a sheep rancher. He's real happy with his life, but he is the proper heir to the throne. They took quite a bit tracing him down. It was a great documentary on that. You go watch that video. It's a good one. Well, my glasses, which someday I'm going to get adjusted, professionally adjusted, these are off the shelf, are on my head. I really like the book of Judges in the Bible. And when we go through these things, they always forget Yahweh. They always do evil in the sight of Yahweh, and Yahweh always hands them over to somebody else. Doesn't that sound like our country today? We've been handed over to somebody else. I watched a great little video by Brother Nathaniel. He's trying to do Bible studies, but I wish he would get the names right. He hasn't risen above that yet, but he did cover the fact that salvation isn't just faith alone. It's got to have works. And he gets into that, and I tend to think he's more right than wrong on it, but he needs to get a hold of a copy of this Bible, and I put comments in there as well on this video. I liked it. I liked that video. Sometimes I don't like his stuff much. Anyway, we're going to go to Judges chapter 6 and probably cover 3 chapters. This is a story of Gideon. Judges 6, chapter 1. The proper name version of the King James Bible. Okay. Somebody's sending one for me to autograph. I had to tell the publisher. What do I say? Well, I know what I'm going to say, but I mean, and I don't know if I considered it an honor exactly, because I'm not responsible for this thing. I just put the videos out here, and I'm just pointing it out to you that I think it's the best Bible available today. So here we go. And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of Yahweh, and Yahweh delivered them into the hand of Midian for 7 years. And the hand of Midian prevailed against Israel. And because of the Midianites, the children of Israel made them the dens which are in the mountains and caves and strongholds. And so it was, when Israel had sown, that the Midianites came up, and the Amalekites, and the children of the east, even they came up against them. It's 3 different groups. And they encamped against them and destroyed the increase of the earth, till you come up unto Gaza, and left no sustenance for Israel, neither sheep, nor ox, nor donkey. For they came up with their cattle and their tents, and they came as grasshoppers for multitude. For both they and their camels were without number, and they entered into the land to destroy it. And Israel was greatly impoverished because of the Midianites. And the children of Israel cried unto Yahweh. And it came to pass when the children of Israel cried out unto Yahweh because of the Midianites, that Yahweh sent a prophet to the children of Israel, which said to them, Thus says Yahweh, God of Israel, I brought you up from Egypt, and brought you forth out of the house of bondage. And I delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians, and out of the hand of all that oppressed you, and drove them out from before you, and gave you their land. And I said to you, I am Yahweh your God. Fear not the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you dwell. Wow, but you have not obeyed my voice. So fear not the gods of the Amorites, but they didn't obey. And so they must have been worshiping the gods of the Amorites. And there came an angel of Yahweh and sat under an oak which was in Ophrah, that pertained to Joash the Abiezrite. And his son Gideon threshed wheat by the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. And the angel of Yahweh appeared to him and said to him, Yahweh is with you, you mighty man of valor. And Gideon said to him, O my Lord, if Yahweh is with us, why then is all this befallen us? And where did all his miracles which our fathers told us of, saying, Did not Yahweh bring us up from Egypt? But now Yahweh has forsaken us and delivered us into the hands of the Midianites. And Yahweh looked upon him and said, Go in this your might, and you shall save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Have not I sent you? And he said to him, O my Lord, with what shall I save Israel? Behold, my family is poor in Manasseh, and I am the least of my father's house. And Yahweh said to him, Surely I will be with you, and you shall smite the Midianites as one man. And he said to them, If I have found grace in your sight, then show me a sign that you talk with me. Depart not away, I pray you, until I come to you and bring forth my present and set it before you. And he said, I will tarry until you come again. And Gideon went in and made ready a kid and 11 cakes of an ephah of flour. The flesh he put in a basket, and he put the broth in a pot, and brought it out to him under the oak, and presented it to him. And the angel of God said to him, Take the flesh and the unleavened cakes, and lay them upon this rock, and pour out the broth. And he did so. Then the angel of Yahweh put forth the end of his staff that was in his hand, and touched the flesh and the unleavened cakes. And there rose up a fire out of the rock, and consumed the flesh and the unleavened cakes. Then the angel of Yahweh departed out of his sight. When it says the angel of Yahweh, some people believe that's Christ, that's Yahweh, the Messiah himself. I don't know, just possible, but it seems to be a key phrase. And when Gideon perceived that he was an angel of Yahweh, Gideon said, Alas, O Lord Yahweh, for because I have seen an angel of Yahweh face to face. And Yahweh said to him, Peace be to you, fear not, you shall not die. Then Gideon built an altar there unto Yahweh, and called it Yahweh Shalom. Unto this day it is yet in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. I think I say that right. And it shall come to pass the same night that Yahweh said to him, Take your father's young bullock, even the second bullock of 7 years old, and throw down the altar of Baal that your father has, and cut down the grove that is by it, and build an altar unto Yahweh your God upon the top of this rock, in the ordered place, and take the second bullock and offer it a burnt offering with the wood of the grove with which you shall cut down. Then Gideon took 10 men of his servants, and did as Yahweh said to him. And so it was, because he feared his father's household and the men of the city, that he could not do it by day. So he did it by night. And when the men of the city rose up early in the morning, behold, the altar of Baal was cast down, and a grove was cut down that was by it, and the second bullock was offered upon the altar that was built. And they said one to another, Who has done this thing? And when they inquired, asked, they said, Gideon, the son of Joash, has done this thing. Then the men of the city said to Joash, Bring out your son, that he may die, because he has cast down the altar of Baal, and because he has cut down the grove that was by it. And Joash said to all that stood against him, Will you plead for Baal? Will you save him? He that will plead for him, let him be put to death while it is yet morning. If he is a god, let him plead for himself, because one has cast down his altar. Therefore, on that day he called him Jerubbaal, saying, Let Baal plead against him, because he has thrown down his altar. Then all the Midianites and Amalekites and the children of the east were gathered together and went over and pitched in the valley of Jezreel. Those three groups again. But the Spirit of Yahweh came upon Gideon, and he blew a trumpet. And Abiezer was gathered after him. And he sent messengers throughout all Manasseh, who also was gathered after him. And he sent messengers to Asher, and to Zebulun, and to Naphtali, and they came up to meet him. And Gideon said to God, If you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said, behold, I will put a fleece of wool on the floor, and if the dew is on the fleece only, and it is dry upon all the earth beside, then shall I know that you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said. And it was so, for he arose up the next day, and thrust the fleece together, and wrung the dew out of the fleece, a bowl full of water. And Gideon said to God, Let not your anger be hot against me, but I will speak this once. Let me prove, I pray you, but this once with the fleece. Now let it now be dry only upon the fleece, and upon all the ground let there be dew. And God did so that night, for it was dry upon the fleece only, and there was dew on all the ground. Then Jerubbaal, who was Gideon, and all the people that were with him rose up early, and pitched beside the well of Harod. So the host of the Midianites were on the north side of them, by the hill of Moreh, in the valley. And Yahweh said to Gideon, The people that are with you are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hands, lest Israel vaunt themselves against me, saying, My own hand has saved me. Now therefore go to, proclaim in the ears of the people, saying, Whoever is fearful and afraid, let him return and depart early from Mount Gilead. And there returned of the people 22,000, and there remained 10,000. And Yahweh said to Gideon, The people are yet too many. Bring them down to the water, and I will try them for you there. And it shall be that of whom I say to you, This shall go with you, the same shall go with you, and of whomever I say to you, This shall not go with you, the same shall not go. So he brought down the people to the water, and Yahweh said to Gideon, Every one that laps of the water with his tongue as a dog laps, him you shall set by himself. Likewise, every one that bows down upon his knees to drink. And the number of them that lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, were 300 men. But all the rest of the people bowed down upon their knees to drink the water. And Yahweh said to Gideon, By the 300 men that lapped will I save you, and deliver the Midianites into your hand, and let all the other people go every man to his place. So these men used their hands, stayed upright, and drank. They kept watch while they drank. So the people took provisions in their hand and their trumpets, and he set all the rest of Israel, every man to his tent, and retained those 300 men out of 32,000, I think we started with. And the host of Midian was beneath him in the valley. And it came to pass the same night that Yahweh said to him, Arise, get you down to the host, for I have delivered it into your hand. But if you fear to go down, go with you Phurah your servant down to the host, and you shall hear what they say, and afterwards your hands be straightened to go down to the host. Then he went down to Phurah his servant to the outside of the armed men that were in the host. And the Midianites and the Amalekites and all the children of the east lay along the valley like grasshoppers for multitude, and their camels were without number, as the sand of the sea for multitude. I believe the Amalekites were giants. And when Gideon had come, behold, there was a man that told a dream to his fellow and said, I dreamed a dream. And lo, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the host of Midian, and it came to a tent, and smote it that it fell, and overturned it that the tent lay along. And his fellow answered him and said, This is nothing else save the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel, for into his hand has God delivered Midian and all the host. And it was so, when Gideon heard the telling of the dream and the interpretation, that he worshipped, and returned to the host of Israel and said, Arise, for Yahweh has delivered into your hand the host of Midian. And he divided the 300 men into 3 companies, and he put a trumpet in every man's hand with empty pitchers, and lamps within the pitchers. And he said to them, Look on me and do likewise, and behold, when I come to the outside of the camp, it shall be that, as I do, so shall you do. When I blow with a trumpet, I and all that are with me, then blow you the trumpets also on every side of all the camp, and say, The sword of Yahweh and of Gideon. So Gideon and the 100 men that were with him came to the outside of the camp in the beginning of the middle watch, and they had but newly set the watch. And they blew the trumpets and broke the pitchers that were in their hands. And the 3 companies blew the trumpets and broke the pitchers and held the lamps in their hands and the trumpets in their right hands to blow therewith. And they cried, The sword of Yahweh and of Gideon. And they stood every man in his place round about the camp. And all the host ran and cried and fled. And the 300 blew the trumpets, and Yahweh set every man's sword against his fellow, even throughout all the host. And the host fled to Bethshittah, and to Zererath, and to the border of Abimelech, and to Tebeth. Wow. And the men of Israel gathered themselves together out of Naphtali, and out of Asher, and out of all Manasseh, and pursued after the Midianites. And Gideon sent messengers throughout all Mount Ephraim, saying, Come down against the Midianites, and take care before them the waters to Bethbarah and to the Jordan. Then all the men of Ephraim gathered themselves together, and took the waters to Bethbarah and to the Jordan. And they took 2 princes of the Midianites, Oreb and Zeeb, and they slew Oreb upon the rock of Oreb, and Zeeb they slew at the winepress of Zeeb, and Zeeb they slew at the winepress of Zeeb, and pursued Midian, and brought the heads of Oreb and Zereb to Gideon on the other side of the Jordan. Judges 8. The men of Ephraim said to him, Why have you served us thus, that you called us not, when you went to fight with the Midianites? And they did chide him sharply. They were butthurt for sure. And he said to them, What have I done in comparison of you? The politician comes out of our boy Gideon. Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephrath better than the vintage of Abiezer? God has delivered into your hands the princes of Midian, Oreb and Zeeb, and what was I able to do in comparison to you? Then their anger was abated toward them when he had said that. Little flattery, little sugar, huh? Gideon came to the Jordan and passed over, he and the 300 men that were with him, faint, yet pursuing them. And he said to the men of Succoth, Give, I pray you, loaves of bread to the people that follow me, for they are faint, and I am pursuing after Zebeth and Zalmunna, kings of Midian. And the princes of Succoth said, Are the hands of Zebeth and Zalmunna now in your hand, that we should give bread to your army? And Gideon said, Therefore, when Yahweh has delivered Zebeth and Zalmunna into my hand, then I will tear your flesh with the thorns of the wilderness and with briars. And he went there to Penuel and spoke to them likewise. And the men of Penuel answered him as the men of Succoth had answered him. And he spoke to the men of Penuel, saying, When I come again in peace, I will break down this tower. Now Zebah and Zalmunna were in Karkor, and their hosts with them about 15,000 men, all that were left of the host of the children of the east. For there fell 120,000 men that drew the sword. Wow. And Gideon went up by the way of them that dwelt in their tents on the east of Nobeth and Jogbehah, and smote the host, for the host was secure. And then Zebah and Zalmunna fled. He pursued after them and took the 2 kings of Midian, Zebah and Zalmunna, and discomforted all the host. And Gideon, the son of Joash, returned from battle before the sun was up, and caught a young man of the men of Succoth, and inquired of him. And he described to him the princes of Succoth and the elders thereof, even 70 men, 77 men. And he came to the men of Succoth, and he said, Behold, Zebeth and Zalmunna, with whom you did upbraid me, saying, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in your hand, that we should give bread to your men that are weary? And he took the elders of the city, and thorns of the wilderness and briars, and with them he taught the men of Succoth. And he beat down the tower of Penuel, and slew the men of the city. Then he said to Zebah and Zalmunna, What manner of men were they whom you slew at Tabor? And they answered, As you are, so were they. Each one resembled the children of a king. And he said, They were my brothers, even the sons of my mother. As Yahweh lives, if you had saved them alive, I would not slay you. And he said to Jether, his firstborn, Up and slay them. But the youth drew not his sword, for he feared because he was yet a youth. Then Zebah and Zalmunna said, Rise you and fall upon us, for as the man is, so is his strength. And Gideon arose and slew Zebah and Zalmunna, and took away the ornaments that were on their camels' necks. Then the men of Israel said to Gideon, Rule you over us, both you and your son's son also, for you have delivered us from the hand of Midian. And Gideon said to them, I will not rule over you, neither shall my son rule over you. Yahweh shall rule over you. And Gideon said to them, I would desire a request of you, that you would give me every man the earrings of his prey. For they had golden earrings, because they were Ishmaelites. And they answered, We will willingly give them. And they spread a garment, and did cast therein every man the earrings of his prey. And the weight of the golden earrings that he requested was 1,700 shekels of gold, besides ornaments and collars and purple robes that were on the kings of Midian, and besides the chains that were around their camels' necks. Oh boy. Red underlines. And Gideon made an ephod thereof, and put it in his city, even in Ophrah. And all Israel went there a-whoring after it, which thing became a snare to Gideon and to his house. Thus was Midian subdued before the children of Israel, so that they lifted up their heads no more, and the country was in quietness for 40 years in the days of Gideon. And Jerubbaal, the son of Joash, went and dwelt in his own house. And Gideon had 70 sons of his body begotten for he had many wives, 70 boys. And his concubine that was in Shechem, she also bore him a son, whose name he called Abimelech. And Gideon, the son of Joash, died in a good old age, and was buried in the sepulchre of Joash his father, in Ophrah of the Abiezerites. And it came to pass, as soon as Gideon was dead, that the children of Israel turned again, and went a whoring after Baalim, and made Baal-Berath their god. They did their child sacrifice again. And the children of Israel remembered not Yahweh their God, who had delivered them out of the hands of all their enemies on every side. They forgot. Neither showed they kindness to the house of Jerubbaal, namely Gideon, according to all the goodness which he had shown to Israel. I'm going to call it right there and make it short. So we stopped just short of Judges 9. The main recurring theme throughout Judges is that the Israelites forgot Yahweh. They forgot Yahweh and they went after the gods of the local peoples. And they did those horrible practices. And then they were handed over to their neighbors, handed over to their enemies. And then they were oppressed. And they would cry out to Yahweh. Yahweh would hear them. The pleas would come up to him, and he would send them a judge. The most famous judge being, of course, Samson. And the judge would deliver them. And for a while, everything was good. But then somebody either does something wrong and or they forget Yahweh. And so it happens again. In many ways, I wish we could see the time of the judges repeat now. But, I mean, when Gideon said he wasn't going to rule over them, neither was his boys, but Yahweh was going to rule over them, that was about the best answer he could ever give. But then he takes all of those golden trinkets and ornaments, earrings, 1,700 ounces of gold, shekels of gold. It's a lot of gold. And he makes an ephod, makes a breastplate or something, and puts it in the city, and they go worshiping it. Wow. And he has all these sons by his wives, 70 of them. But he has one son by his concubine, Abimelech, who becomes very important in the next chapters. And as soon as Gideon passes away, Israel turns again and becomes ensnared by the gods of that land of Canaan that they were told not to go after. And of course, we have in here the groves of trees where they did their worshiping and their sacrifice, their child sacrifice, and their other weird religious ceremonies. They did that above ground. And at some point, it all went underground. Maybe it started to go underground then. I think that it went underground a little bit earlier, if I get my time right. Probably at the time that Canaan became cursed, when he was cut up by his uncle Shem, and the pieces were sent around to the tribes saying, if you don't stop harming the children, child sacrifice, these weird practices, all this other stuff which he started and led you, he was the chief priest of it, then the same thing's going to happen to you. And Shem meant it. Shem followed through on everything. Got to remember, Shem was a great warrior. He went into Egypt and he left a monument to himself there, a stone on the border saying basically, Shem went into Egypt and there found every evil and conquered all. So he didn't tolerate it. In case you're wondering, and I don't know if this is true, that that Sphinx. They say that that was a statue, if you will, a monument built to Shem. That Shem apparently had long red hair. And it's believed that all redheads today are descendants of Shem. So you fellas out there meet a redheaded girl and you find her attractive, tell her that. It'll sweeten her up a little bit. Either that or she's going to realize you're a problem for her and you might get you smacked. Who knows? But Shem was a redhead. And that story gets confounded a little bit. Why does it get confounded? Because if we look earlier, we find out that Esau may have been red as well, who became Edom. Just don't know. Have to look at that a little closer. If you got the answer to that, then tell me, because I'm here to learn too, you know. I'm not here to lord it over you, to rule over you, or to really dominate you. I don't want the responsibility. If I have an opinion, fine. If it's got some weight to it, and this book is right behind it, wonderful. If it's not, and if it's something we can disagree about, that's acceptable. That's all right. We don't have to agree on everything. Brother Nathaniel says that, you know, faith without works is dead. You can't get saved just by believing. And I happen to agree with him. Although other people will pull from the text and say, see, it says all you have to do is believe. That's it. You don't have to do anything more. I think salvation is worked out. You live your life according to that faith. And then hopefully you make it. All right, folks, that's all I got for you today. Keep it short. I might do another one back to back on this because I really like the book of Judges. Yahweh bless. Yahweh make America good again. Man, I really should have a hat, and I should put that on it. But I have to be honest with you. I have a problem using red for the Republicans. Do you realize that started on the television reporting that they decided to call the Republican Party red? And the Red Party, the Democrat Communist Party, they decided to call it blue. They inverted that on us. They started that tradition and we haven't broken from it. But I really think the party for the Democrats should be the party of the communists, the party of Esau, Edom, red. So what do? Get a purple hat or a blue hat, green hat? Nah, I don't think a green hat. Certainly don't get a rainbow hat. I mean, that was a wonderful sign, wonderful symbol up in the heavens. They sure took that symbol. It's amazing how we have taken perfectly good symbols and turned them, how they've taken things over and hijacked it. Well, Yahweh bless. And Yahweh make you good. Make America good again. Thereby we might be able to become great once again. Maybe Yahweh will step in and even give us the road back to our republic, that we might have it restored. The Jeffersonian Republic. Jefferson had the cure for that, by the way. He said when you lose your republic, you form into small groups of about 100 men. And you don't let anybody in among you who doesn't believe in the republic, doesn't believe and think the way you do, which basically is something that Jefferson got from Moses out of the Bible. And Jefferson's quite a bit maligned, and I do think he made a mistake when he said the pursuit of happiness. It should have been estate, should have been property, estate, that a man should be able to build that and pass that on as he sees fit if we're to have real property rights. May Yahweh bless. May you bless Yahweh.